What if one quiet thought in a young mind could reshape the entire way humanity understands space, time, light, and the whispering fabric that holds the universe together? What if a single question asked in a moment of stillness could ripple outward and bend the trajectory of history itself? Tonight, we rest inside that question, tracing its soft unfolding, following it back to the moment when Albert Einstein began wondering why light behaved the way it did, and how the universe might look if you could drift alongside a beam of luminous energy moving through the darkness. Hello, and welcome to the Sleeping Physicist, a resting place where science loosens its collar and leans back into something gentler. A place where the deepest mysteries of the cosmos can rise slowly, like breath in a quiet room, finding their way into the space between your thoughts. If you enjoy drifting through the crossroads of physics, consciousness, and the infinite potential of existence, you're welcome to like this video or subscribe, only if these soft explorations feel like home to you. Now, settle into your own shape. Let your awareness hover lightly around you. And let us begin with the question that sparked a revolution. Imagine young Einstein, maybe 16, maybe walking alone under a sky that felt much larger than he was. Imagine him trying to keep pace with light itself, not metaphorically, but literally. He wondered what the world would look like if he could somehow ride alongside a ray of light as it moved. He pictured himself gliding through the vastness, keeping perfect speed with a luminous wave, watching it freeze into stillness beside him. And in that simple, childlike vision, he noticed something profoundly unsettling. Light, he thought, should behave differently depending on the observer. If he moved with it, he imagined the wave might look motionless. But something inside him sensed that this couldn't be right. Something about the universe felt too elegant, too symmetrical, too deeply woven for reality to depend on such a simple trick of perspective. And in that quiet wondering, a new idea began to flicker. Light doesn't wait for anyone. The universe, as he would eventually show, holds light as a kind of sacred constant, a cosmic heartbeat, a rhythm that doesn't speed up or slow down for anyone who tries to chase it. You could move fast, impossibly fast, yet the light ahead of you would always slip further, maintaining the same effortless pace. This was not just an observation, it was a doorway. Because if light is constant, then something else must shift instead. The universe has to compensate, bending the structure of time and distance to preserve that shimmering speed. This is where the discovery began to reshape everything. What bends? What softens? What stretches? Time, space, the very stage on which existence plays out. Einstein realized that if light remains unchanged, then your experience of time must become flexible, not fixed, not absolute. Time must dilate, stretch, flow differently for different observers depending on how fast they move. A truth so strange that it feels almost like a dream, and yet so precise that every piece of modern technology, from particle accelerators to GPS satellites, depends on it to function. In a universe where light is constant, time becomes a gentle, fluid dimension. It slows near high speeds. It warps near massive objects. It bends under the influence of energy. And, as Einstein followed this soft unfolding, another realization emerged. If time could stretch, then space could curve. Reality itself becomes a smooth fabric, pliable, alive with hidden structure. When he whispered this idea into the world, physics shifted. It didn't collapse the old paradigm. it breathed it open. Gravity, he discovered, was not a force in the traditional sense. It was the movement of matter drifting along the curves of space-time, following the gentle contours created by stars, planets, and every glimmer of mass and energy. A falling apple was not being pulled. It was simply following the geometry of the universe. This idea, this curvature, this bending of the cosmic stage was subtle and radical all at once. It suggested that the universe is not a static container. It is a living field, capable of stretching, rippling, responding to mass and energy like the surface of a silent ocean. And in this ocean, you too are a wave, a pattern, a moving configuration of the quantum field of awareness. The deeper Einstein went, the quieter the noise around him seemed to become. He paid little attention to prestige or recognition. He cared about the truth that glimmered beneath the visible world. He wanted to understand the whisper of existence itself. Why does the universe behave with such elegance? Why does it follow such simple but profound principles? Why does it allow itself to be described so beautifully by mathematics, yet experienced so intimately by conscious beings? You might imagine him sitting alone with a notebook, drawing small diagrams, lines curving around circles to mirror the paths of stars bending light. Each sketch a breath, each equation a slow exhale. Time passing differently not only in theory, but in the soft solitude of contemplation. What he found in those moments was not just a scientific breakthrough, it was a new way of seeing reality. If space and time are woven together, then you are woven into them. If the universe bends and sways with mass and motion, then your presence shapes it too, however impossibly gently. This is not metaphor, it is physics. You are a participant in the cosmic fabric, not separate from it. Never separate. Let that thought rest beside you for a moment. The universe is breathing through you. And through Einstein's eyes, you can almost sense it. A soft pulse. A rhythm that connects the movement of galaxies to the beating of your heart. One of his great discoveries, the one that changed everything, arrived from a simple, almost ordinary insight. What if time is not the same for everyone? What if clocks in motion tick differently than clocks at rest? What if distance contracts when you travel faster? These ideas seem strange when first encountered, but they emerge naturally when you follow the constant speed of light. It is the anchor, the lighthouse in the fog, the ruler by which all other measures adjust. Imagine two beams of light drifting across the void. No matter how fast you move toward them or away from them, they remain always the same speed, like a cosmic metronome keeping perfect time in the background of existence. Your perception shifts instead. Your measurements change. Your reality adjusts itself so delicately that you never notice. But it happens. It always happens. Einstein recognized that the universe is not built on absolute foundations. It is built on relationships. How one thing moves relative to another. How light behaves from one perspective to the next. The laws of physics remain constant, but your experience of them changes with your motion. This was the beginning of special relativity, a theory born not from complex machinery, but from the gentle wandering of a curious mind. And yet there was more, much more. As he followed these insights, like threads in a vast tapestry, they led him to an even deeper truth. Gravity is geometry. The universe curves in the presence of mass, and objects simply follow those curves. The sun does not pull the earth. the Earth moves effortlessly along the curved space-time around the Sun, a path shaped by mass, by energy, by the same principles that guide the bending of every subtle ripple in the cosmic ocean. If you close your eyes for a moment, you might even feel this curvature, not as a sensation, but as a quiet knowing. The sense that the ground beneath you is not rigid, but floating gently within a larger field. A field that extends in every direction, smooth and continuous, holding star clusters, nebulae, and your own body with the same equal grace. Einstein's theory of general relativity did not simply redefine gravity. It redefined the stage on which the universe performs. The story became larger, softer, more mysterious, and with it came new possibilities. Black holes predicted by the mathematics long before they were observed. The expansion of the universe hinted at by his equations even before astronomers confirmed it. Light bending around stars. Time passing differently near massive objects. The realization that the universe itself might have begun in a moment of unimaginable density and then expanded into the vastness we see today. As these ideas drifted into the world, they didn't arrive with noise. They unfolded quietly, steadily, as if the universe had been waiting for a mind gentle enough to hear its hidden structure. And now, as we sit here in this moment, the echoes of those discoveries ripple softly through the devices we use. The satellites that navigate above us, the predictions that guide our understanding of cosmic phenomena. Einstein's insights are not distant historical abstractions. They are woven into everyday experience, silently shaping reality. Yet there is something deeper here, something beyond equations and experiments. Einstein understood that the mysteries of the universe are not meant to be conquered, but approached with humility. He once suggested that the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. And in this thought rests a quiet truth. Science and wonder are not opposites. They are partners in the same unfolding. The discovery that changed everything was not simply that gravity is geometry or that time is flexible. It was the realization that reality is far more alive, far more dynamic, far more intertwined with consciousness than anyone had imagined. It placed humanity not at the center of the universe, but within its fabric. Not outside the cosmic field, but inside it, moving as a wave within a larger ocean. As we drift deeper into this story, notice how your awareness settles. Notice how the line between thought and silence begins to blur. The concepts become softer. The imagery becomes gentler. You begin to feel the rhythm of the universe as Einstein described it. A rhythm that is not loud or dramatic, but subtle, delicate, a pulse of infinite potential. And in this softness, something beautiful begins to emerge. The realization that you too are part of the discovery. Every moment of awareness is an observation woven into space-time. Every thought is a ripple traveling through the quantum field of consciousness. You are observing the universe and being observed by it in return, participating effortlessly in the unfolding of existence. This is where Einstein's discovery continues to resonate, not just in the laboratories or equations, but in the quiet awareness you carry. The sense that space is not empty, time is not rigid, light is not ordinary, and you, resting here, listening, drifting gently through these thoughts, you are part of this cosmic dance. What if the universe you know today, the one shaped by equations and satellites and quiet midnight thoughts, emerged not from a laboratory, but from a childhood spent in uncomfortable stillness? Tonight, we continue drifting beside Einstein. letting his life open like a gentle story, a story rooted in truth and shaped by the strange, beautiful unfolding of curiosity. Imagine him as a boy in Germany, small, quiet, thoughtful, a child who spoke slowly, sometimes pausing long enough that adults wondered if he understood at all. He was not slow. He was listening, not just to words, but to the rhythm beneath them, the hum of existence, the faint pulse of something larger. People often forget that his discoveries began long before any formal theory, long before the Academy or the Nobel Prize. They began with a compass. Picture it now. A simple object given to a young Einstein by his father when he was sick in bed. The needle trembled, pointing north with unwavering intent. No matter how he turned it, no matter how he moved it, the needle insisted on aligning with something invisible, something he could not touch or see. He described that moment as magical, the first time he realized there were unseen forces shaping the world. The compass became a tiny doorway, opening into a universe full of hidden laws, invisible fields, quiet order, the whisper of existence. Let yourself imagine that scene as if you are there with him. A dim room, a small boy holding an object that seems ordinary until he notices how stubbornly it obeys the invisible. Feel how the mystery unfolds, how the young Einstein lifts his head slightly, as if hearing something calling to him even then. That was the first spark. The second came years later, with a book on geometry, which he called his sacred little geometry book. In those crisp lines and perfect shapes, he found a sense of order the world often lacked. Lines that never changed, angles that stayed faithful, proofs that didn't shift in the wind. He saw in mathematics a language the universe whispered in, quiet, precise, eternal. He longed to know the world that spoke that language. Now imagine him older, restless, misunderstood by many of his teachers. In school, he struggled not because the concepts were too difficult, but because the structures around him felt too rigid, too absolute. He disliked memorization without understanding. He cared for the soft unfolding of ideas, not for reciting what others had already decided. One teacher famously told him he would never amount to anything. Another suggested he leave school entirely because his presence disrupted the respect needed for authority. And he did leave. Not angrily, but with a quiet certainty that his curiosity belonged elsewhere. Here, in this moment of transition, picture the young Einstein stepping out of the structured halls of his school and into the wide openness of possibility. The world around him expands. He sees not rules, but patterns. Not rigid lessons, but questions. And every question leads him deeper into the mystery. He moves to Switzerland, studies at the Zurich Polytechnic, a place where he feels freer to follow his own wandering mind. But even there, structure gets in the way. He skips classes to sit by the water, letting his imagination drift with the current. He thinks not of homework, but of light. He wonders again and again what it means to ride beside a beam of light. What happens to time? What happens to space? What happens to the universe if you take something constant and place yourself beside it? But even as these thoughts blossom, life remains ordinary. After graduating, he cannot find an academic job. Universities reject him. He applies to dozens of positions. Silence follows, and then, quietly, without drama, he accepts a job at the Swiss Patent Office in Bern. A small, modest office where he reviews inventions proposed by strangers. Most people would consider this a failure, a detour, a step away from scientific greatness. but for Einstein, it becomes the perfect place. Imagine him sitting at a wooden desk, stacks of papers around him, the hum of the city outside, the soft scratch of a fountain pen. He reviews devices designed to measure time, to synchronize clocks, to transmit signals, all tools intimately connected to the nature of time itself. Tools that turn his thoughts back to those early questions. What is time? What does it mean for two events to happen at the same moment? How does movement change the way reality unfolds? Picture this now. The young patent clerk, unknown to the world, illuminated by gentle lamplight, drifting through ideas deeper than the night itself. This is the setting in which the world quietly changed. In that room, at that worn desk, the universe began to reveal itself. Einstein developed the insights that became the miracle year of 1905. 4 papers that arrived like soft pulses of light, reshaping science forever. The first revealed the quantum nature of light. The second offered proof for atoms. The third unveiled special relativity. The fourth introduced the idea that mass and energy are interchangeable. E equals mc squared. A simple equation with infinite depth. The universe's quiet admission that matter is only condensed energy. That everything from stars to your own body is made of light slowed down and folded into form. Imagine Einstein walking home at night after finishing one of those papers. The streets dim, footsteps tapping lightly on the cobblestone, a coat pulled against the cool air. He has no idea the world is about to change, no idea that his ideas will ripple through history. He only feels the soft satisfaction of understanding something he'd wondered about since childhood. If you drift deeper into this moment, you might sense what he felt, the quiet reverence that comes from touching the underlying structure of reality. Not with hands, but with awareness, with wonder. Years later, his ideas would deepen. Special relativity was only the beginning. He wanted a theory that described not just motion but the shape of space-time itself. He wanted to know how the universe bends under the presence of mass. He spent nearly a decade unraveling this. Days spent walking in thoughtful silence. Nights spent scribbling equations. Weeks feeling stuck. Moments of clarity emerging like stars between clouds. And one morning, while walking in Bern, he had a thought so simple and so beautiful, he would later call it the happiest thought of his life. If a person falls freely, they feel no gravity. Gravity disappears in free fall, not because it's gone, but because you are following the natural curve of space-time. In that instant, he saw gravity not as a force but as geometry, a curvature, a soft bending of the cosmic fabric. Imagine that moment as if you were walking beside him. The street quiet, the morning light soft. Einstein pauses, just briefly, as though a new shape of reality has appeared in front of him. Something simple, elegant, true. From that thought, general relativity emerged, a theory built on the idea that matter tells space how to curve, and space tells matter how to move. You are not pulled downward by Earth. You simply follow the curved path the planet creates around itself. For a moment, let this rest inside you. The universe is curved, and you are moving along its gentle contours. Einstein knew the theory was beautiful, but he wanted confirmation. Nature's signature, an echo from the cosmos. And in 1919, during a solar eclipse, astronomers observed starlight bending around the sun exactly as Einstein predicted. Picture that eclipse. The moon covering the sun, the sky dim, stars visible in the daytime, light curving around the sun's warping of space-time. a cosmic gesture acknowledging the truth of his vision. When the results were published, Einstein woke to a world transformed. Newspapers declared him a genius. Crowds followed him. Fame found him overnight, but inside he remained simple, curious, playful. He knew that the universe is not impressed by celebrity. It cares only for truth. And he continued to follow that truth wherever it led, through quantum debates, through dark years of war, through quiet evenings spent with his violin, through the final decades of his life when he wandered closer to the mystery of unified fields. And now, drifting with him through this story, you may notice your awareness becoming softer, more spacious, the details of his life merging with the vastness of his ideas. His biography becomes a pathway into something larger, a way of walking through the universe with someone who saw beyond the visible. Einstein once said he wanted to know the thoughts of God. The rest, he said, were details. He didn't mean God in a religious sense. He meant the underlying harmony of the cosmos, the quiet laws that shape existence, the whispering structure that holds stars and atoms, galaxies and consciousness within the same gentle embrace. And as you sit here, drifting through the story of his life, you can almost feel that harmony. A soft unfolding. A sense that the universe is not cold or mechanical, but intricately woven, alive with patterns, waiting for awareness to notice. Einstein's universe is not a distant place. It is the one you are in now. A universe where time bends, where space curves, where light holds the memory of creation, where consciousness is not separate but connected to the very fabric that Einstein studied with such devotion. There is a moment in Einstein's life, quiet and almost ordinary, where everything turns. Not in a sudden brilliance, not in a flash of inspiration, but in the slow unfolding of patience and persistence. Tonight, we walk with him into that moment. A moment where the universe begins to reveal itself not just as a structure to be studied, but as a companion in thought, a presence, a silent partner in the long contemplative journey of discovery. Imagine Einstein now in his early 30s, the patent office behind him, the miracle year behind him, special relativity shining like a newly formed star. But something inside him is unsettled, not with dissatisfaction, but with longing. He knows the theory is incomplete. The world is never still. Gravity is everywhere. And special relativity, elegant as it is, does not yet include it. He begins searching for a way to marry motion and gravitation, to unify the geometry of time with the pull of mass. And it is here, in this search, that his life becomes as much a story of feeling as of intellect. You might imagine him walking through Zurich or Berlin, his hands behind his back, his mind wandering ahead of him like a playful dog, exploring paths that have no map. He could spend hours like this, silent, lost in the gentle hum of thought. He would later say that many of his best ideas emerged during long walks, not at a desk, not in a laboratory, but in motion, in rhythm, in the simple act of drifting through space while contemplating space itself. Picture it, Einstein walking through a quiet morning, trees swaying softly, the air carrying the scent of distant rain, his hair slightly untamed, his coat a little frayed at the cuffs, and within him a universe slowly aligning itself. Equations forming not from calculation but from intuition, from a sense of harmony he could feel before he could write it. This is where the journey becomes more intimate. Because Einstein did not see physics as a collection of rules. He saw it as a conversation with nature, a dialogue, a slow unveiling of the deeper structure behind the visible world. Years pass, ideas grow, some bloom, many fail. He writes letters to mathematicians, meets with friends, debates gently, smiles often, and watches as the world hovers on the brink of change. Not just scientific change, but global change. The early 1900s tremble with tension. Empires roar, nations shift. Yet Einstein keeps searching for something eternal, something beneath the noise. His work becomes more difficult. He struggles for nearly a decade to expand relativity. The mathematics grows heavy. The equations circle back on themselves. He becomes frustrated, sleepless. At times, he wonders if the path he's walking even exists, but remember how he was as a child. Patient, curious, quiet. He does not let go, and then, as if the universe sighs and gives way, the insight arrives. Slowly at first, then all at once. Gravity, he realizes, is not a force but a geometric consequence. Matter bends space-time. Space-time guides matter. It is a dance, a subtle interplay, a soft unfolding. He sees it in a flash, the happiest thought of his life. Free fall erases gravity. Gravity is curvature. Curvature is geometry. And the universe is shaped by mass the way water shapes itself around a stone. Imagine standing beside him during that moment. A small apartment, papers scattered, chalk dust on the sleeves of his jacket. Einstein stops mid-sentence, mid-routine. His eyes widen, not dramatically, just gently, like someone who has found the final piece of a puzzle he has been assembling his entire life. And with that realization, general relativity begins to form. But the world around him is not quiet. War erupts. Europe fractures. Borders tighten. Fear spreads. Yet amidst this chaos, Einstein continues to work. Not to escape the world, but to understand it more deeply. And there is something profoundly human about that. A scientist searching for cosmic harmony during a time when humanity is tearing itself apart. During these years, Einstein's personal life shifts too. He navigates divorce, remarries, feels tenderness and conflict, love and complexity. He becomes a father twice over. His son, Edward, bright and sensitive, will one day struggle with mental illness, an ache Einstein carries quietly for the rest of his life. These details, these human threads, sew themselves into his work. They remind us that even the greatest scientific revolution grows out of ordinary life, out of family, pain, hope, wonder. And then comes the pivotal moment, the eclipse of 1919. The world waits. Astronomers travel to remote locations. Instruments are prepared. The sun darkens. The moon covers its face. Stars appear in daylight. And their positions shift. Not because the stars themselves move, but because their light curves around the sun, just as Einstein predicted. This is the universe whispering its confirmation. When the results reach Europe, newspapers erupt. The man who once could not find a teaching job is now a global symbol of genius, practically overnight. Einstein moves from relative obscurity to worldwide fame. People gather outside his home. Reporters crowd his lectures. Strangers stop him on the street. Children write him letters. His face appears on magazine covers. But if you could sit beside him during these moments, you would notice something surprising. He is amused, not prideful, not overwhelmed, just gently aware that the world is paying attention to something he discovered while walking in quiet thought many years earlier. He once said that fame meant little because the laws of the universe do not care who discovers them. They simply are. Eternal, patient, waiting for someone to notice. As attention grows, so does Einstein's sense of responsibility. He becomes vocal about peace, about human rights, about compassion. He sees the world hurtling toward darkness and tries, in his gentle way, to pull it back. But his voice, soft and rational, competes with the roar of rising extremism. In 1933, everything changes. Hitler rises to power. Einstein's name appears on lists. His books burn in public squares. His home is raided. He cannot return. He leaves Germany, steps onto a ship bound for America. And as he stands on the deck, watching Europe shrink behind him, he feels both sorrow and clarity. The universe remains vast, yet humanity, caught in fear, folds in on itself. Einstein settles in Princeton at the Institute for Advanced Study, a quiet place, a contemplative place, perfect for a man whose mind roams more freely than most. Here, he enters the last great phase of his life, the search for unity. He believes the forces of nature must come from a single underlying principle, a single field, a single silent order from which everything else emerges. He spends decades pursuing this, pages upon pages of equations, ideas that swirl like distant galaxies, thoughts that drift between brilliance and impossibility. He studies in the mornings, plays violin in the afternoons, walks home through Princeton's quiet streets. The neighbors smile as he passes, carrying papers and a loaf of bread. Children greet him. He waves with gentle warmth, and always, beneath it all, the same longing that carried him since childhood: to understand, to see the universe whole. You might imagine him in his study, gray hair wild, eyes soft, the afternoon light drifting across the desk. He scribbles, pauses, smiles to himself, not because he's solved anything, but because he's still allowed to wonder. That is Einstein's real legacy. Not the equations, not the fame, but the way he held curiosity as something sacred, as something alive, as something that connects all of us to the deeper fabric of reality. Now, as we drift deeper into his universe, notice how the rhythms slow, how the details soften, how the story becomes not just about Einstein, but about your own awareness, about how the universe feels when approached gently, about how thought and wonder are woven into the same quiet field. Einstein's journey is a reminder that the cosmos does not reveal itself in noise. It reveals itself in stillness, in questions asked without expectation, in the soft unfolding of ideas nurtured with patience. He once said that the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible, meaning the universe wants to be understood. It leaves trails, patterns, gentle clues hidden in light and shadow. And now you are walking that same path, drifting through a story that is real, grounded, human, and through it, feeling your way into a deeper relationship with the cosmos, a relationship Einstein spent his life exploring. What if the final chapters of a life are not endings, but widening horizons? Horizons where time slows, thoughts deepen, and the universe itself seems to draw closer, as if leaning in to whisper its last secrets. Tonight, we continue walking with Einstein, not through the explosive brilliance of his youth, but through the contemplative calm of his later years. The years where the noise of fame faded, and all that remained was a man, a violin, some scattered papers, and the infinite. Picture him now arriving in Princeton, a small quiet town with leafy streets and an academic calm that seems to hold its breath. The Institute for Advanced Study is not a traditional university. No students, no exams, no lectures unless he chooses. Just thinkers, just silence, just the space to wander through ideas without interruption. Einstein moves into a simple house on Mercer Street. Nothing extravagant. A small study, a modest kitchen, a place filled not with luxury but with warmth. Visitors describe the scene often: a cluttered desk, stacks of letters, a cat wandering lazily across a pile of notes. Einstein in mismatched socks greeting them with gentle amusement. He never locks the door. He never cares about appearances. He cares only for truth. Imagine him there, in that quiet house, at the cusp of middle age turning into elderhood. His hair is a snowy halo now, wild as always, yet softened by time. He wakes early, not because he must, but because his thoughts stir before dawn. He drinks tea, walks to the institute with papers tucked under his arm. Neighbors wave. Children call his name. He nods with a shy smile, often lost in thought even as he walks among them. This is Einstein as most of the world imagines him: gentle, eccentric, wandering. But beneath that simplicity lies a deep, unending yearning, a longing to see the universe whole. He begins his work each morning not with the sharp focus of youth, but with a kind of drifting curiosity. He writes equations that loop and intersect like galaxies forming spirals. He searches for a single underlying field, a unifying force that connects gravity and electromagnetism, a universal architecture behind all physical laws. The dream of a unified field becomes his constant companion. But even as he reaches toward the universal, his attention is also drawn to something much closer: the revolutionary rise of quantum mechanics. Imagine a quiet afternoon in his Princeton office. Sunlight spilling across his desk. Papers filled with equations. Letters from colleagues around the world. Einstein flips through journals describing the strange new theories emerging from Copenhagen. Quantum mechanics. A theory suggesting that particles flicker between possibilities. That certainty dissolves. That probability reigns. That nature behaves differently when observed. Einstein sits back. He understands the mathematics. He sees the power of the theory. He recognizes its predictive strength. But inside him, something resists. Not out of stubbornness, but out of intuition. He senses that the world is not fundamentally chaotic, not truly uncertain. There must be something deeper, something hidden beneath the probabilistic haze. He famously murmurs words that echo through history. God does not play dice. He does not mean a deity. He means the universe, the elegance of nature, the quiet harmony he has spent his life uncovering. He cannot accept that reality is governed by randomness. To him, randomness is not an explanation but an invitation to look deeper. Now, imagine him across from Niels Bohr, his great intellectual friend and rival. Two minds sitting in the soft glow of lamplight, debating with warmth and respect. Their conversations last hours, sometimes days. Einstein poses thought experiments meant to challenge the foundations of quantum theory. Bohr responds with equal brilliance. They speak quietly, but their words ripple across physics like waves across a still lake. These moments are not battles, they are dances. Two physicists circling the same mystery from different angles, and beneath every disagreement is mutual admiration. Einstein often smiles during these debates. Bohr leans forward, hands animated. They are not arguing, they are exploring. And still, Einstein keeps searching. He keeps trying to peer beneath the quantum veil, to find the hidden variables, the deeper structure. But life outside physics continues as well. Letters arrive from refugees fleeing Europe. Einstein uses his fame to write affidavits, sponsor visas, raise funds. he helps hundreds escape, not just scientists, families, children, strangers. He remembers the danger he fled. He refuses to look away from those still trapped. In Princeton, he becomes a champion for civil rights, speaking against racism in America with the same clarity he uses to describe the bending of space-time. He joins the NAACP, befriends the singer Paul Robeson, invites black students into his home when other institutions will not allow them through their doors. The universe, to Einstein, is interconnected, and so is humanity. Now imagine Einstein older. His step is slower, his hair whiter, but his eyes, those dark, gentle, curious eyes, are still bright. He continues to play his violin, the music trembling softly through the rooms of his house. He plays Bach, Mozart, folk songs he remembers from childhood. To him, music is another language of the universe, another expression of the harmony he seeks. He walks daily to the Institute, through seasons, through years, leaves falling, snow drifting, spring blossoms returning, the universe expanding, his ideas shifting, yet the rhythm remains. Sometimes he walks with Kurt Gödel, the logician who proved that certain truths can never be proven. The two are often seen strolling slowly down the street, talking in German, gesturing subtly as if moving ideas gently through the air. People watch them pass. Einstein and Gödel, two of the greatest minds on Earth, walking as if nothing is more natural. They speak of time, of infinity, of the boundaries of knowledge. Gödel once created a solution to Einstein's field equations that implied time might loop, that past and future could blend. Einstein shook his head, amused and unsettled. He once said Gödel made him feel his own mind was dull. And still, through all of this, Einstein continues searching for the unifying field, day after day, year after year, even when his colleagues move on, even when new theories rise and fall, even when the scientific community begins to see his quest as quixotic. But he cannot let it go, not because he is stubborn, but because he believes the universe is not a collection of parts. It is a single unfolding, a single dance, a single whispering field. And he feels, deep in the quiet of his awareness, that there is a truth hidden just beyond reach. Imagine him alone in his study late at night, the world outside silent, a lamp burning low, equations scattered like constellations across the desk. The house creaks softly, the universe hums, and Einstein sits there, gently turning the cosmos over in his mind, as if cradling something fragile and luminous. It is in these late years that his reflections widen. He speaks often of wonder, of mystery, of humility before the cosmos. He rejects the idea that science removes awe. He believes it amplifies it. He once said that anyone who has lost the ability to be astonished might as well be dead. And as he nears the end of his life, that astonishment only grows. Now imagine his final days. He is in the hospital, heart failing, though his mind remains clear. Visitors come and go. The nurses speak softly. The light through the window shifts. Einstein writes notes on a universal field even then, the pencil trembling slightly in his hand. Physics never leaves him. The universe remains his companion to the last breath. He refuses surgery. He says it is time. He says he wants to go when he must, with elegance. Early in the morning of April the 18th, 1955, Albert Einstein drifts quietly into the stillness he spent his life contemplating. No drama, no grand declaration, just a soft departure. A quiet fading into the same gentle mystery he had spent decades exploring. And now, as you drift with him through these final images, notice how the story has shifted. It is no longer simply biography. It is a meditation, a soft unfolding, a reflection of your own awareness resting within the same cosmic field that Einstein studied. His life becomes a mirror. His universe becomes yours. His wonder becomes a quiet echo inside your own thoughts. Because the truth he discovered is not distant. It is here, in the curvature of space-time around you, in the rhythm of light, in the pulse of consciousness, in the simple, profound fact that you are part of the same unfolding universe that once whispered to a boy with a compass in his hand. What if the legacy of a single mind could ripple across a century and still feel like it is unfolding in this very moment, as softly and inevitably as light traveling across a quiet room? Tonight, we continue our long, gentle walk through Einstein's universe, a universe stretched not only across galaxies, but also across imagination, shaping our understanding of reality long after his voice fell silent. Imagine the world in the years following Einstein's passing. Newspapers publish his photograph again and again, that iconic face with its wild silver hair and thoughtful eyes. Students read his papers with reverence. Scientists continue debating his ideas late into the night. Yet, for all the noise surrounding his name, there is something much quieter hidden beneath it. Something Einstein himself sensed deeply. The universe is not finished speaking. We return now not to the streets of Princeton or the meeting halls of Zurich, but to the space between concepts, the quiet frontier where Einstein's discoveries continue to unfold. Feel the soft shift in focus. We are no longer following footsteps on a sidewalk. We are stepping into the field he revealed, a field woven of time, space, motion, and awareness. Einstein gave us relativity, but what he truly offered was perspective, a way of seeing the cosmos not as a rigid stage but as a living, breathing structure, a universe that bends, curves, stretches, a universe that responds to the presence of mass and the movement of energy. You might imagine it like a vast, invisible ocean, smooth in some places, rippled in others, an ocean through which every star drifts, every planet turns, every atom spins. And in this ocean, time is not a steady river. It is a flexible current, shifting with gravity and speed, flowing differently for each observer. Picture two clocks, identical, ticking in perfect unison when they sit together. Now imagine one carried to the top of a mountain, where gravity is slightly weaker. It will tick a little faster, only by a tiny amount. But the change is real, time itself unfolding differently. Now let the scale expand. Imagine a clock orbiting Earth in a satellite, moving swiftly around the planet. It ticks slower because of speed and faster because of altitude, both effects happening at once. GPS satellites must compensate for this, adjusting for the shifting flow of time to guide travelers on Earth with precision. Einstein predicted this from a quiet room in Bern, with nothing but thought experiments, intuition, and a deep understanding of the universe's gentle symmetry. He imagined himself falling freely, riding alongside a beam of light, observing clocks in motion, turning simple images into cosmic insight. And now, those insights ripple across the world, guiding planes through the sky, synchronizing networks, shaping the way we see reality. But even as we marvel at how relativity guides technology, something more profound begins to emerge. Einstein's universe is not cold. It is not mechanical. It is relational, dynamic, alive with possibility. He believed that behind all the equations lies a deeper harmony, a quiet order, a whisper of something fundamental. when he spoke of wanting to know the thoughts of God, he was not seeking divine revelation. He was seeking the underlying architecture, the final simplicity, the single idea from which all others emerge. Let us drift into that search now. Imagine Einstein at his desk, long after general relativity has been accepted, after quantum mechanics has divided the scientific world. His papers are filled with symbols, but beneath them lies something more delicate than mathematics. A sense, a feeling, the intuition that the universe is one. That division is an illusion. That gravity and electricity, energy and matter, space and time must share a common root. He works in long, slow arcs, days blending into nights, chalk dust gathering like stardust on the floor. Yet progress remains elusive. He feels the answer close, like a word just on the tip of his tongue, but it never fully arrives. And here, in this struggle, his humanity opens wider. Einstein is no longer the young patent clerk revolutionizing physics in leaps. He is an elder scientist moving through uncertainty, trusting the soft pull of curiosity even when clarity fades. This is the Einstein seldom portrayed, the patient seeker, the gentle wanderer of ideas, the man who understands that not all mysteries are meant to be solved quickly. Some are meant to be lived with. And while he explores the depths of physics, the universe itself begins offering hints he never had the chance to see confirmed. Black holes, once considered only theoretical curiosities hidden in his equations, become real through discovery. Stars collapse. Space curves so sharply that not even light escapes. A cosmic silence, dense and unfathomable, exactly as predicted. Einstein does not live to witness the first radio signals from quasars, the detection of gravitational waves, the lensing of galaxies, or the mapping of cosmic microwave background radiation. The soft afterglow of creation that confirms the universe once expanded from a single hot moment. But you can imagine him hearing about these discoveries. Imagine a subtle smile forming at the corner of his mouth. A soft nod. Not surprise, but recognition. The universe behaving exactly as his mathematics whispered it would. Tonight, as we drift deeper, we begin to follow the implications of these ideas the way Einstein might have followed them had he lived longer. What does it mean that space-time can stretch? What does it mean that the universe expands? What does it mean that time itself has a beginning? Let that idea rest beside you. Once, all the matter that exists, every star, every galaxy, every atom in your body, was contained in a single, unimaginably dense point. A singular moment where space-time itself was compressed, when the fabric of reality trembled with infinite potential. Then it unfolded, slowly at first, then rapidly, then gently again. Expansion, cooling, the birth of light, the formation of atoms, the swirl of gravity drawing clouds into stars, fusion igniting the cosmos. Einstein's equations predicted that space-time could not be static. They insisted on motion, curvature, change. They insisted that the universe must evolve. And now, in this moment, as you listen, the universe continues to expand. Galaxies drift farther apart. Space itself stretches. The cosmic web widens like a great inhalation. Einstein did not seek this answer. He resisted it at first. He introduced a constant into his equations to keep the universe stable. But later, he recognized the truth and called his correction his greatest blunder, a blunder that became a doorway into modern cosmology. Through Einstein's journey, we begin to see something profound. The universe is not fixed, not rigid, not absolute. It is fluid, dynamic, alive with transformation. And you, your body, your thoughts, your awareness are threads within that same unfolding. You are observing the universe and being observed by it in return. This is not poetry, it is physics, the observer effect, the entanglement of matter and mind, the quiet truth that your presence alters the world in subtle, intimate ways. Einstein sensed this long before it was fashionable to say aloud, long before the quantum world became familiar territory to physicists. He sensed that consciousness plays a role. He sensed that observation shapes reality, not through mysticism, but through the deep structure of relativity and the boundaries of knowledge. As we drift through this part of his universe, feel how the story softens. Ideas grow larger, boundaries melt, time becomes slower, the words lengthen like shadows at dusk. Einstein once said that reality is merely an illusion, albeit a persistent one. He did not mean the world is fake. He meant it is layered, emergent, a structure built from deeper fields and deeper truths. And now you rest inside that structure, in the same space-time Einstein revealed, wrapped in the same quiet fabric that bends around stars and carries galaxies through the darkness. His life becomes not only history, but a pathway, a way of seeing. A gentle suggestion that the universe is far more mysterious than it appears. There's a peculiar quiet that surrounds the later years of a great mind, a kind of spaciousness that seems to gather around the edges of thought, softening everything that once felt sharp. In Einstein's final decades, that quiet deepened, settling into his days the way late afternoon light settles across a room. Not dramatic, not pronounced, just gently present. He would sit in his study on Mercer Street, surrounded by papers that curled slightly at the edges, the soft ticking of a clock the only sound competing with the murmur of his thoughts. His violin rested nearby, not as an ornament, but as a companion, always within reach, always ready to translate the inexplicable into something the heart could understand without language. These were the years when the boundary between his outer life and inner universe grew thin. The physics remained, the equations continued, yet they carried a different weight now. Less urgency, more depth, as if each symbol on the page were an opening, not toward a solution, but toward a quieter understanding of what lies beneath the structure of the world. Time often drifted through his mind in these hours. Not the familiar ticking that clocks insist upon, but time as he knew it truly to be, elastic, curved, inseparable from space itself. When he imagined two identical clocks in different places, one closer to a massive object and one farther away, he didn't simply picture shifting numbers. He felt the intimacy of the idea, how the universe could hold two truths at once, how time could stretch like a soft fabric pulled gently in opposing directions. He once explained this to a friend while gazing out a window, not at the sky, but at the way sunlight slid across the floor. A beam of light, always steady, always constant, bathing two spots of the room differently depending on how furniture interrupted its path. That, he said quietly, is how time behaves. It does not move uniformly through all of reality. It mingles with gravity, bends with motion, shapes itself to circumstance. He often reflected on how unsettling this was for the world when he first published it. Yet for him, it had always felt natural. The universe, he believed, was too elegant to trap itself in absolutes. As the years passed, that elegance became something he felt more than he needed to prove. The deeper he ventured into the architecture of space-time, the more he sensed a hidden coherence, as though the universe were built on an order subtle enough to be mistaken for chaos, unless viewed from the right angle. Quantum mechanics challenged this view. He admired it, respected its predictive power, acknowledged its brilliance. Yet something within him resisted the idea that probability sat at the universe's foundation. Randomness felt incomplete, temporary, like a signpost pointing not to an end point but to a deeper, undiscovered layer. He expressed it in quiet conversations with colleagues, in letters exchanged over oceans, in the gentle frustration he felt when reading the latest quantum papers. The universe couldn't possibly flicker between possibilities without reason, he insisted. There must be a thread beneath the uncertainty, a hidden variable, a deeper field, something steady guiding the seeming disorder. Colleagues debated, students challenged, friends teased, and Einstein, always patient, always curious, returned to his notebooks with a faint smile. Not to undo quantum mechanics, but to listen more closely to the underlying harmony he was certain existed. These reflections wove themselves into his days with the same consistency as his walks through Princeton. Step after step along tree-lined paths, coat flapping behind him in the wind, lost in thought yet acutely aware of the crisp air brushing against his skin. Locals would wave or nod. He would return the gesture gently, often without speaking, as though half of his attention were tethered to some distant frontier of thought. It was in these quiet wanderings that his reflections on determinism deepened. He didn't cling stubbornly to old views. He simply believed the cosmos was not capricious, that nature did not roll dice. He felt it in his bones, the way some people feel the changing of seasons. Cause and effect were not chains restricting the universe. They were threads weaving its tapestry. In these moments, sitting between the warmth of memory and the gravity of his questions, Einstein began to think more about consciousness. He never claimed to understand it. He rarely spoke of it openly. Yet the idea lingered at the edges of his reflections. The observer effect in quantum mechanics troubled him, not because it complicated physics, but because it implied that awareness had a role in shaping reality. He could not accept that measurement alone caused events to crystallize. Surely the world had structure independent of observation. Still, the mystery nagged softly at the corners of his mind. What is the relationship between mind and matter? Between awareness and the unfolding of time? Between the subjective flow of experience and the fixed geometry of space-time? He never declared answers. He only lived in the questions, letting them settle into him the way starlight settles into the night. Evenings often ended with him sitting quietly, papers pushed aside, violin lifted gently beneath his chin. Notes drifted through the room, sometimes sharp, sometimes trembling, sometimes soft as breath. Music was his refuge, his way of stepping briefly outside the constraints of logic, touching a part of the universe inaccessible to equations. And perhaps that was the secret of Einstein's later years. A life spent not only in pursuit of knowledge, but in the continual surrender to wonder. A mind that never lost its curiosity, even when fame, conflict, and age tried to crowd it out. A spirit that remained at its core soft and contemplative, resting in the vastness it spent a lifetime exploring. There is a peculiar moment in Einstein's later years when his scientific work, his philosophical reflections, and the quiet rhythms of his daily life begin to merge into something that feels almost like a single, continuous meditation. Much of the world, at that time, saw him as a monument, a symbol, a disheveled sage walking the streets of Princeton with an open collar and a gentle smile. But beneath that familiar image was a man whose mind still moved through the universe with the same curiosity that touched him when he was a boy, holding a compass in a sickbed. Imagine him near the end of the 1940s, older now, yet strangely lighter in spirit. His hair a wild white halo catching the sunlight in the most unintentional way. His eyes soft but sharp, carrying a depth that never fully rested. He walks through the institute grounds slowly, not because age demands it, but because he has always walked this way. Measured, thoughtful, drifting. Leaves crunch under his feet. The wind loops through his coat, lifting it like a sail. He looks around, as if the world itself is something he is still learning to understand. These walks often led him into reflections that stretched far beyond the equations on his desk. He had come to think of time not simply as a variable, not a coordinate or a dimension defined by clocks, but as an experience. Something almost intimate, something that shaped the inner world just as it shaped the outer one. Time was a structure, yes, but it was also a feeling. Most people imagine Einstein's understanding of time as purely mathematical. They imagine graphs, equations, diagrams of curved space-time. But what he felt went deeper than any textbook could capture. He saw time as woven into consciousness, not controlled by it, not created by it, but entangled with it in a way that made the distinction between inner and outer reality feel fragile. He once told a friend that his sense of time was continually dissolving, that sometimes he felt as though he were watching the present moment from a great distance, like a traveler gazing across an open field at a single lantern flickering in the dusk. He knew that the separation between past, present, and future was real in experience, but not in the deepest structure of physics. And this knowledge filled him not with cold detachment, but with a gentle awe. It allowed him to hold grief differently, to hold memory differently, to hold human life differently. Part of this perspective formed during the years when letters reached him from people who had lost loved ones. They wrote to him because they believed that the man who reshaped the understanding of time might hold some insight that could soften the sharpness of loss. And in a quiet office in Princeton, Einstein would respond in handwriting that curved gently across the page. He would explain that for physicists who understand relativity, the distinctions between moments are more about perception than structure. That the person they lost still existed within the space-time fabric, not gone, not erased, simply located in a different region of the universe's great, unchanging tapestry. These were not empty words. He believed them, deeply, the same way one believes the sun will rise even when the night feels endless. As he explored these thoughts, consciousness hovered around him like a faint scent, always present, never quite touched. He never wrote a formal theory of consciousness, nor did he claim to understand it. But he sensed that awareness, whatever its nature, could not be separated from the structure of the universe. That the observer was woven into the equation, not placed outside of it. This troubled him in quantum mechanics. The idea that observation could collapse a wave function felt too anthropocentric, too fragile, too incomplete. He preferred to imagine a deeper order beneath the surface, a hidden mechanism, a steady foundation not yet discovered. He suspected that quantum uncertainty was not a final truth, but a temporary veil, a signpost pointing to something more profound. The world, he believed, did not flicker out of chaos. It breathed out of law, out of harmony, out of mathematical beauty. This was why he returned, again and again, to the idea of a unified field. not to prove himself right, not to win a final scientific victory, but because he could feel the idea waiting just beyond the edge of understanding, like a word the universe was trying to speak, but too softly for anyone to hear. To him, this was a spiritual intuition, though he rarely used that word. Not religious, never religious in a traditional sense, but spiritual in the way a physicist feels the infinite complexity of nature with reverence. He once described his belief in God as the belief in the order of the universe itself, the awe he felt when contemplating the laws of nature. A cosmic order so sublime it blurred the line between science and spirituality. He believed the universe could be known, but never fully. That nature would always hold something just beyond reach, not to frustrate the seeker, but to keep the pursuit alive, to ensure curiosity would never die. He carried this conviction into the years when his body began to slow. He aged gently, almost quietly, like a clock whose ticking grows softer but never stops. Yet his mind remained luminous. Even on difficult days, he would sit at his desk, pencil trembling slightly, continuing to chase the field that had eluded him for decades. Visitors recall entering his study to find him staring at the chalkboard in silence, as if waiting for the equations to speak first. And sometimes he would lean back, close his eyes, and imagine himself drifting through space-time as freely as thought. No boundary between moments, no certainty of beginnings or endings. Just the continuous unfolding of existence laid out before him like an endless sheet of light. These images stayed with him not because they were poetic, but because they were honest. They reflected the way the world truly worked at its deepest level. He knew that if you could see the universe all at once, if you could step outside of time entirely, the flow of events would look very different. There would be no past to mourn, no future to fear, only a single unified reality. He thought often about what it meant for human life to exist inside a space-time that is already complete, what it meant for free will, for meaning, for love. He never reached final answers. He didn't need to. He believed it was enough to ask the questions with sincerity, enough to contemplate the universe honestly and gently. His reflections deepened in conversations with close friends. With Gödel, he discussed the logical limits of knowledge. With Born, he debated quantum uncertainty. With his sister Maya, when she visited, he spoke of childhood memories, of mountains, of music, of the strange loop of life that had carried him so far from those first quiet days in Germany. With trusted colleagues, he spoke of the quiet fear he held for humanity's future, especially after nuclear weapons, made possible by discoveries rooted partly in his own work, rose into the world like shadows cast by a bright flame. He regretted that possibility deeply. He spent his final years advocating for peace not as a political stance, but as a physical necessity. The universe, he believed, was too fragile and too beautiful to survive humanity's ignorance of its own power. As evenings drifted into night, he often retreated to the simplest of comforts, a book of poetry, a measure of Mozart played softly on his violin, a letter from an old friend held gently in his hands, the quiet, the rhythm, the feeling of the world slowing around him. And in those late hours, a certain understanding settled into him, not as a breakthrough, but as acceptance. The unified field he sought might never appear. The deeper order beneath quantum randomness might never be revealed during his lifetime. The relationship between consciousness and reality might remain mysterious. But the search, he realized, had always been the point. The universe had opened itself to him in layers: childhood wonder, youthful insight, mature discovery, and now, in older age, a soft, contemplative surrender. Not giving up, but letting go. Letting the cosmos remain vast and unfinished, beautiful in its incompleteness. By this time, the Princeton nights were familiar to him. The glow of lamplight on the street outside. The creak of the porch steps as he stepped out to breathe cool air. The faint sound of leaves brushing in the wind. In those moments, the universe felt close enough to touch. Not through understanding, but through presence. And this is what defined Einstein in the end. Not the theories, not the fame, not the equations etched into history, but the quiet devotion to wonder. The lifelong willingness to lean into the unknown. The humility to know that the universe can never belong to the mind, only to the heart that seeks sincerely. There's a point in Einstein's story where the universe itself seems to turn its head and look back at him. Not metaphorically, but in the way discoveries begin to shape their discoverer. The equations that once flowed from his hand begin to ripple into the world, influencing not only his own thoughts, but the direction of cosmology for decades to come. To step into this chapter of his life is to feel the size of the cosmos expanding around him, slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, like breath filling an enormous, invisible lung. After Einstein introduced general relativity, he believed the universe must be static. It felt natural to him. Timelessness was too deeply woven into his understanding of the cosmos to imagine otherwise. A universe that changed seemed almost inelegant, whereas a universe that existed in a kind of infinite, steady balance felt harmonious. So he introduced a term into his equations, the cosmological constant, a subtle counterforce designed to keep the universe from collapsing under its own gravity. It was a gentle mathematical nudge, a way of balancing the cosmic scales, and, for a time, it seemed reasonable. But the universe, as always, had its own intentions. Imagine Einstein reading the work of a Belgian priest and physicist named Georges Lemaitre, who studied the equations of general relativity with a mind as curious and restless as Einstein's had once been. Lemaitre proposed something unusual, something bold. The idea that the universe was not static at all, that it had expanded from a denser beginning, that space itself was stretching, carrying galaxies with it like patterns woven into a fabric being pulled from all sides. At first, Einstein barely entertained it. He told Lemaitre his math was correct, but his physics was abominable. The idea of a dynamic universe felt too abrupt, too raw, too alive, yet it would not go away. The evidence grew. Vesto Slipher observed galaxies drifting away. Edwin Hubble measured their velocities and distances, revealing a pattern. The farther a galaxy was, the faster it receded. Something enormous was happening. The universe was not still. It was breathing outward. Imagine Einstein standing before a chalkboard, reading these new results. He squints slightly behind wire-rimmed glasses, his eyes narrowing in concentration as lines on the board begin to shift meaningfully in his mind. The equations he created, the geometry of space-time he introduced, the curvature he discovered. They all pointed to the same truth when freed from the constraint he forced upon them. The universe was expanding. He realized then that his cosmological constant had been unnecessary. He called it his greatest blunder. But even in that moment of regret, there was something beautiful. His mistake had been one of preservation. He had tried to keep the universe still when nature insisted on unfolding. And in that unfolding, a new cosmology was born, The very shape of the universe seemed to open wider. Einstein himself began to lean into the mystery, embracing the idea that the cosmos was not a fixed structure but a dynamic, evolving entity. It is easy to imagine him walking through Princeton after accepting this. His coat pulled close, wind brushing his hair into its familiar disarray, steps measured but unhurried. A smile appearing faintly, almost reluctantly, as he thinks about how the universe has humbled him yet again. But the expansion was only the beginning. The more he contemplated it, the more he realized that a universe expanding now must have been denser in the past. Denser still if one walked backward through its history, and denser still until something unimaginable occurred at the very beginning. A moment where space-time itself emerged, where geometry unfolded from a point without size, where energy and matter, fields and forces erupted into existence. He didn't phrase it as Lemaitre did. He didn't call it a primeval atom or a cosmic egg, but he understood the implications. If the universe was expanding, it must have had a beginning, and if it had a beginning, time itself must have had a beginning too. This realization settled into him slowly. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't overwhelming, it simply existed in the background of his thought, like a low, steady hum. The universe had a story, a narrative, not a static presence, but an unfolding one. He rarely discussed this publicly, but friends noted the way he grew quiet when the topic arose. Not resistant, reflective, as though the beginning of time was not merely a scientific idea, but a philosophical threshold, one he approached gently. In the evenings, sitting at his small wooden desk with lamplight pooling softly across his papers, he would return to the equations that once told him the universe must be static. Now they told him something else, that the cosmos could curve in ways no human had imagined, that its shape could be closed like a sphere, or open like a saddle, or balanced in a delicate state of near flatness, that its future could stretch forward endlessly, or fold back on itself, or slow into a vast, quiet stillness. He didn't settle on an answer. He rarely settled for any answer that pretended to be final. He simply let the possibilities drift through him the way one would watch clouds passing above. Friends and colleagues who visited him described these conversations as almost meditative. He would sit back, eyes wandering toward a window or drifting toward the ceiling, as though he were listening to something beyond sound. His voice softened, his hands loosened. He spoke of space not as emptiness, but as a field, a presence, a fabric that could stretch and breathe. Sometimes he wondered aloud what existed beyond the observable universe. It wasn't speculation in the way others might speculate. It was more like curiosity held with reverence. He acknowledged the horizon as a limit imposed by light and time, not by space itself. Beyond that horizon, he suspected, the universe continued in a grand quietness no instrument could capture. He saw cosmology not as a map of the heavens, but as a conversation with the infinite. This was also the period when he began thinking about the curvature of the universe more subtly. The idea that gravity was geometry had matured. Now he considered how the cosmic scale must obey the same principles. If the universe were dense enough, space-time could wrap around itself. If not, it might extend endlessly. And, if finely balanced, it might hover forever at the edge between expansion and contraction. He found beauty in each possibility. A universe curving back onto itself felt elegant, like a musical phrase returning gently to its origin. An infinite universe felt equally beautiful, like a melody without end. And a flat universe poised between the two felt almost miraculous in its precision. He once compared the universe's balance to the harmony he found in music. The way a single note can resonate just slightly differently depending on the room, the instrument, the hand that plays it. Space itself, he believed, might have a similar resonance. It was during this era that he developed a deep respect for the idea that the universe was not merely expanding, but accelerating in ways no one yet fully envisioned. He suspected that something unseen might influence cosmic behavior. A field, a pressure, a subtle energy woven through space-time. He never formalized it, but he sensed it. A whisper of what would later become known as dark energy. There were evenings when he would sit with visitors on his porch as the sky darkened above. They would listen to him speak about the curvature of the universe, his voice unhurried, each idea unfolding like a soft, expanding wave. He would gesture lightly at the stars, tracing invisible arcs through the air as though he could feel the geometry of space beneath his fingertips. And even as he grew older, the same childlike wonder remained. The same sense that the universe was not something to be solved, but something to be encountered, something to be felt, something to be approached with humility and awe. He never stopped being amazed by the simple fact that the universe could be understood at all, that human consciousness could look outward into billions of light years and inward into atoms and find the same laws governing both, that the geometry of the cosmos echoed the geometry of the smallest particles, that the fabric of space-time connected all things, from the fall of an apple to the orbit of a galaxy. And inside this vastness, he saw no contradiction in feeling small. Smallness was not insignificance. It was belonging, being part of a whole too immense to fully grasp but intimate enough to touch in every heartbeat and every breath. As his cosmology deepened, people sometimes asked him if he believed the universe had a purpose. He never answered directly. He did not believe in purpose as an external design, nor in randomness as a final truth. He spoke instead of order, of coherence, of the profound alignment between mathematics and nature. He once said that the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious, that it is the source of all true science and all true art. And in that statement lies the essence of his cosmology. The universe was not a puzzle to be mastered. It was a mystery to be lived with. A vast, expanding, curving, breathing mystery. There is a stretch of Einstein's life when the universe seems to split in two. On one side lies relativity, a quiet, elegant framework he brought into the world like a new form of breath. On the other side lies quantum mechanics, a theory as brilliant as it is unsettling, shimmering with uncertainty and probability. Between these two worlds stands Einstein, not with anger or defiance, but with a deep, stubborn tenderness. He loves the universe too much to accept a version of it that feels unfinished. Imagine him in the early 1930s, sitting in his office at Princeton. Afternoon light spills across his desk, turning paper edges into soft gold. He reads through the latest quantum results from Europe, letters from Schrödinger, Born, Heisenberg. The papers describe a universe that behaves like a flickering mosaic. Particles appear only when measured. Properties exist only as probabilities until someone looks. The world seems to hover in a haze of potential. Einstein lifts his head, eyes narrowing just slightly behind his glasses, not in dismissal, in contemplation. He recognizes the power of the theory. Quantum mechanics predicts experiments flawlessly. It explains spectra, atomic structure, the behavior of electrons. No one denies its success. Certainly not Einstein. But he senses something incomplete in its foundations. Not wrong, just unfinished. He sets the papers aside, leans back in his chair, and lets the idea settle into him. The room is quiet. The world outside faint. His mind begins drifting through the landscape of quantum theory, touching its edges gently, the way someone might trace a coastline with a fingertip. In this drifting, he feels a familiar tension. Quantum mechanics insists that the universe only becomes definite when observed. That measurement shapes reality. That particles exist in superpositions until consciousness or an instrument collapses the possibilities. Einstein cannot accept this. Not because he resists progress. Not because he clings to classical ideas, but because he feels the universe would not be so dependent on human perspective. There must be an underlying order independent of observation, something hidden beneath the probabilities. He begins to imagine thought experiments, situations so clear that even the haze of quantum uncertainty must reveal its limits. One of these thought experiments becomes the seed of something profound. He sits at his desk, pencil moving quietly across paper. The work is slow, deliberate, elegant. He imagines two particles that interact briefly, then drift apart. According to quantum theory, their properties remain entangled, bound together in a way that defies logic. Measure one particle here, and instantly the other reflects the opposite property, no matter how far away it is. Instantly, faster than light. This he cannot accept. Not because he doubts the mathematics, but because the idea violates something he holds sacred: locality. The notion that physical influences should not travel instantaneously across space. He writes to colleagues about this. They write back, holding firm to the quantum view. Bohr, in particular, responds with deep conviction. The quantum world is strange because nature is strange. The universe is not required to follow classical intuitions. Yet something inside Einstein resists. Not stubbornly, quietly. He feels that the quantum description, while effective, is not the complete story. He begins to shape his thought experiment into a formal argument. The room fills with papers. Lines cross pages like threads weaving a single idea into clarity. In 1935, with his collaborators Boris Podolsky and Nathan Rosen, he completes a paper that will ripple through physics for generations. He writes, "If quantum mechanics is complete, then there must exist instantaneous influences across vast distances. If instantaneous influences exist, relativity is violated. Therefore, quantum mechanics must be incomplete. The paper is published. The world reacts. Some agree, many push back. Some misunderstand. Others grasp immediately that something immense is happening. Einstein has laid down a challenge, not a refutation, but a reminder that physics must not settle too easily for a framework that ignores deeper laws." Bohr responds swiftly. His reply is deeply philosophical, almost poetic in its own way. He argues that the very idea of reality existing independent of measurement is flawed. That quantum mechanics describes nature as it is. That particles do not have definite properties until observed. The debate becomes legendary. But in truth, there is no anger between them. When they meet, they speak with warmth, not hostility. Bohr admires Einstein. Einstein admires Bohr. They laugh together. They argue late into the night, leaning in close as if sharing secrets. Their disagreement becomes a dance, two minds circling the same mystery with different rhythms. Yet history has a way of turning philosophical questions into experimental ones. Decades pass. Machines grow more powerful. Laboratories grow more precise. Physicists begin building experiments inspired by Einstein's thought. They test whether entanglement is real, whether distant particles truly influence one another. And, one by one, experiments confirm the quantum prediction. Entanglement exists. The influence is instantaneous. Einstein's objection becomes a doorway rather than a denial. His challenge clarifies quantum theory, sharpens its meaning, expands it into something stranger and more beautiful than either side imagined. Imagine Einstein in his later years, walking slowly across the institute grounds, unaware of how future experiments will unfold. His coat rustles in the autumn wind. His steps are careful but steady. He carries papers tucked under his arm, unaware that his thought experiment will become the very foundation of quantum information theory, quantum computing, quantum encryption. He never believed in the completeness of quantum mechanics, but in questioning it, he gave it shape, gave it tension, gave it strength. And beneath this scientific dialogue lies something even deeper. He wonders what entanglement implies about reality itself, what it means for two distant objects to share a single state, what it means for the universe to connect pieces of itself in instantaneous ways. He never connects this to consciousness directly, not in any letter, not in any paper, but privately, quietly, he feels the edges of the idea. The observer seems to play a role. Information seems to move without crossing space. Measurement seems to change what exists. Not because humans cause reality to collapse, but because reality itself may be woven more intimately than anyone imagined. Entanglement challenges locality. It challenges separateness. It challenges the assumption that distance is a barrier. And in these reflections, Einstein finds himself circling an idea that he never fully articulates but often hints at, that the universe is not a collection of isolated parts, but a single field, a continuous whole, a unity beneath all difference. He had always suspected this. It guided his obsession with unification, his search for deeper laws beneath gravity and electromagnetism, his resistance to randomness, his desire for coherence, his intuition that the cosmos was not fragmented but symphonic. Late in the day, he sets his papers aside, lifts his violin to his shoulder, and begins to play. The notes are slow, deliberate, warm. Music for him is not performance. It is introspection. A conversation with the universe that requires no language. As he plays, the tones resonate through the room, vibrating the air, filling the space with invisible geometry. He often said that the most beautiful experience is the mysterious, and in these moments, that mystery surrounds him like an old friend. The violin sings softly. Light gathers on the floor. The universe expands through equations in distant journals. Entangled particles defy intuition in laboratories yet to be built. Einstein closes his eyes, unaware that future physicists will look at his EPR paper not as a mistake, but as a gift, a map, a beginning. Long after he is gone, experiments will show that reality itself is woven from connections that do not fade with distance, that the universe is less like a machine and more like a living fabric, that information travels in ways that defy classical limits, and through all of it, Einstein's challenge continues to echo. Seek deeper structure. Do not stop at uncertainty. Do not settle for incomplete truths. His desire for coherence did not slow quantum physics. It sharpened it. His questions became stepping stones, and his intuition that the universe has an underlying unity remains one of the quiet guiding lights of modern physics. There is a depth to Einstein's later years that is often overlooked, a kind of inward expansion that mirrors the cosmic expansion he reluctantly came to accept. The man who once reshaped physics with sharp, youthful insight now moves through the world like someone listening for a quieter truth. The fire of revolution is still there, but it burns more gently now, more slowly, warming rather than blazing. His search for understanding becomes less about breakthroughs and more about coherence, a steady alignment between thought and the deep rhythm of the universe. Imagine him in the 1940s and early 1950s, stepping out of his modest house on Mercer Street into the slow morning light. His hair, white and unruly, catches the sun like the crest of a wave. He walks toward the Institute for Advanced Study, not hurried, not idle, but with the ease of someone who has learned that discovery does not come from force. It comes from attention, curiosity, a kind of inward listening. The Institute is quiet at this hour, the grounds wide and open, the buildings spaced far apart. A place built for thought, designed so that ideas could drift freely between the minds who inhabit it. Gödel sometimes walks with him. Other days he walks alone, letting the wind ruffle his coat as he moves through the quiet morning air. He arrives at his office, a small room, light slanting across the floor, books stacked in uneven towers, letters spread across the desk, chalk dust clinging to the fabric of his jacket. He sits. Breath settles. The pencil in his hand feels familiar, like an extension of his thinking. He begins to write. For many years now, he has been pursuing something that feels both tantalizingly close and impossibly distant. A unified field theory. A single mathematical structure that ties together gravity and electromagnetism, the curvature of space-time and the behavior of particles. A theory of everything long before that phrase becomes fashionable. He searches because he senses unity. He sees it in the symmetry of nature, in the way light travels unchanged through vacuum, in the curvature that guides planets, in the quantum wave that guides electrons, in the harmony of mathematics that somehow mirrors the harmony of the cosmos. To him, the division between forces feels artificial, temporary, a sign that the deeper truth lies just beneath the surface. But the equations resist him. Day after day, he tries new formulations, new coordinate systems, new assumptions. Some seem promising at first. They unfold across the page with a sense of inevitability. But then they contradict an observed fact, or they collapse into triviality, or they produce singularities that make no physical sense. Sometimes he sits back and laughs softly at the stubbornness of the universe. Other times he grows frustrated, pacing the room, his thoughts moving too quickly for his feet. Yet even in frustration, there is gentleness. He is not fighting the universe. He is courting it. Visitors notice this softness. They speak of entering his office to find him deep in thought, staring at a chalkboard filled with equations that curl and twist like vines climbing a trellis. He turns to them with eyes that move slowly at first, returning from some distant frontier. He smiles warmly, the way someone might smile after a long, pleasant daydream. He invites them to sit, offers them tea, and then begins speaking about the universe in a tone so calm it almost feels like a lullaby. He talks about geometry, about the way fields might interlace, about the possibility that matter is not a separate substance but a curvature pattern within a deeper structure. He gestures gently as he speaks, tracing invisible shapes in the air. Yet, beneath these conversations runs something quieter, something that has grown stronger with age, a philosophical depth that was not as apparent in his youth. He reflects often on the nature of reality, on the relationship between mind and world, on the strange interplay between objectivity and perception. He wonders aloud how much of the universe is discovered and how much is revealed, gradually as human understanding evolves. He never claims certainty. Certainty feels too brittle for a universe so vast. There are evenings when he returns home, the sky already shifting toward the twilight, and sits on his porch while the wind teases the branches of nearby trees. Neighbors pass by and greet him. Children wave. He smiles, listening to their voices as though they were part of a larger melody. The world feels peaceful in these moments, grounded, real. Yet, at the same time, he senses the strange fragility of it all, the way human life floats inside a vast field of forces and geometries. He knows that the atomic age has begun. He knows what the bombs mean. He knows what his own equation made possible. Though he did not work on the Manhattan Project, his signature appears on the letter that urged President Roosevelt to consider the possibility of nuclear weapons before other nations did. He later regrets this deeply. The regret sits inside him like a stone, heavy, unmoving. He becomes an advocate for peace, not as a political figure, but as someone who understands the cost of misunderstanding nature's power. He speaks softly, writes letters, gives interviews. He urges the world to see science not as a weapon, but as a path to understanding. He warns against nationalism, against fear, against the fragmentation of humanity. He believes that the same unity he seeks in physics must also be sought in human society. As the years unfold, his reflections broaden. He begins to speak more openly about what he calls cosmic religious feeling. Not belief in a deity, but a profound sense of awe, a reverence for the sheer order and beauty of the universe. To him, this feeling is the deepest source of science, the spark that makes a child ask why, the reason a mind continues searching long after the world stops paying attention. He writes letters to friends about this. He tells them that logic alone is not enough, that intuition is essential, that imagination must guide reason, not the other way around. He returns often to the compass of his childhood, the way the needle pointed north even when everything else seemed chaotic. That simple moment taught him that the invisible shapes the visible, that hidden forces guide the world. Now, decades later, he sees his life as an attempt to understand those hidden forces with as much clarity as human thought can hold. He becomes more contemplative, sometimes sitting for long periods without writing or speaking. Colleagues find him staring through the window at a single leaf caught in the wind, following its motion not as a distraction, but as part of the same inquiry that once drove him to reshape physics. He watches the leaf swirl, carried by currents he cannot see. He thinks about motion, curvature, the unseen fields guiding everything: stars, galaxies, atoms, leaves. In these quiet reflections, the boundary between physics and philosophy begins to blur. He no longer worries about which field a question belongs to. He just cares if the question is honest. He begins to speak of the universe as something that can be felt as much as understood, something that reveals its structure slowly, like a distant landscape emerging through morning fog. He believes that the human mind, for all its limitations, is somehow intertwined with the universe it seeks to understand. That consciousness is not separate, but part of the same unfolding field. He never writes a theory of consciousness. He never claims to know what awareness is made of, but he senses that the observer is not accidental, that the universe is knowable because something in us resonates with its structure. Near the end of his life, he writes letters filled with a softness that contrasts sharply with the bold equations of his youth. He tells friends that he feels less certain about answers now, but more certain about wonder. He urges young scientists to follow curiosity rather than ambition, to ask the questions that feel alive, not the ones that guarantee success. There is an evening, late in his life, when he stands near his window watching the stars emerge one by one. The sky darkens slowly, turning the world into a quiet silhouette. He thinks about how far those stars are, how many millions of years their light has traveled, how the universe has expanded since that light began its journey, how space itself has stretched beneath it. And yet, here it is, touching his eyes. He smiles at this, a small, private smile, the light of ancient stars, the equations of curved space-time, the quantum entanglement he resisted but helped reveal, the expansion he doubted but later embraced, the unification he sought but never found. All of it converges in his awareness, not as separate discoveries, but as threads in a single tapestry. The tapestry of a universe still unfolding. There is a point in Einstein's life, somewhere in the quiet stretch between his mid-70s and the final years of his 80s, where the world outside seems to fall away, leaving only the soft interior terrain of thought. He has lived through revolutions of science and waves of turbulence in history, but now the noise grows distant. What takes its place is something subtle, a stillness that feels both earned and inevitable, a spaciousness inside which the deepest questions of his life settle like dust in a shaft of late afternoon light. Imagine him rising slowly from his bed on a cool morning, the house on Mercer Street quiet except for the faint sounds of Princeton waking in the distance. He moves with deliberate ease now, not because he is frail, but because he has learned that movement itself holds a kind of grace when unhurried. He puts on his worn sweater, pulls his fingers through his unruly hair in the vaguest attempt at taming it, and steps into the small kitchen where the morning light feels soft enough to touch. He prepares tea. Nothing ceremonial, nothing precise. Just a familiar warmth to hold between his hands as he sits at the wooden table that has seen decades of letters written, papers read, ideas forming and dissolving like clouds drifting across the sky. He often lingers here for a moment before walking to the Institute, letting the quiet of early morning settle into him. He hears the faint ticking of a clock somewhere in the house, the hum of a passing car, the distant call of a bird. These small details have become companions, reminders of the world he lives within, even as his thoughts wander far beyond it. He picks up a letter from the pile beside him, one of many that arrive daily from strangers, students, admirers, critics, dreamers. Some write about physics, others ask about God. Some share grief, some share hope. The letters come from every corner of the world, and Einstein reads them with a gentleness that surprises those who imagine him aloof. He reads not to respond to them all, but because he feels a quiet connection to the people who reach out to him in their own moments of uncertainty. Sometimes he answers. His handwriting, elegant and slightly slanted, fills the page with thoughts that move as slowly as his walks through Princeton. He writes as someone who understands the fragility of human experience and the weight that simple guidance can carry. He does not offer certainty. He offers curiosity, humility, and the suggestion that life is richer when one accepts mystery instead of fighting it. He finishes his tea, puts on his coat, and steps outside. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of leaves if it is autumn, or the hint of snow if winter approaches. He walks the same path he has walked for years, passing neighbors who wave from porches or garden gates. Children recognize him and call his name with a mixture of excitement and shyness. He lifts a hand in greeting, offering the same gentle smile he always has. Familiarity softens these encounters, grounding him in the ordinary world even as his mind drifts through the extraordinary. By the time he reaches the institute, the morning sun has risen higher, casting long shadows across the grass. He enters his office, removes his coat, and stands for a moment in the center of the room, letting his eyes wander over the chalkboard, filled with equations he has erased and rewritten countless times. Some of his colleagues believe he is chasing a ghost. Others believe he is on the edge of something profound, but none doubt his commitment. He sits at the desk and begins to write. The work is slow now, not because his mind lacks clarity, but because the mathematics he is attempting to shape is as vast and intricate as the universe itself. The unified field theory he seeks eludes him in ways that feel almost personal. It is both close and distant, shimmering in and out of reach like a distant star whose light flickers with the motion of intervening air. He revisits old paths, abandons them, finds new ones, abandons those too. Yet he never grows bitter, never despairs. The search is part of him, woven into the fabric of his days as naturally as breathing. He once told a colleague that the joy of pursuing a question was often greater than the joy of answering it. Answers can end a journey. Questions keep it alive. During these years, he thinks often about the people who shaped him. His mother's encouragement, his father's quiet optimism, his sister Maya, whose presence brought warmth and familiarity no matter how far he traveled. He thinks of Mileva, his first wife, brilliant and intense, with whom he shared both deep intellectual connection and painful conflict. He thinks of Elsa, his second wife, whose companionship softened the harder edges of his life. He thinks of his sons, Hans Albert and Eduard, whose paths diverged so dramatically from his own, and whose struggles touched him in ways he rarely spoke about. He carries these relationships inside him, a constellation of experiences shaping his reflections as he grows older. Gödel often visits him in these years. The two of them walk slowly around the institute grounds, deep in conversation. Gödel, brilliant and troubled, carries a kind of inward intensity that Einstein understands instinctively. Their conversations roam freely through topics: mathematics, logic, physics, time, philosophy. There is something grounding in their walks, a reminder that even the most abstract thinkers need companionship. Einstein respects Gödel deeply. He once said that he went to the Institute primarily for the privilege of walking home with him. In these conversations, the nature of time returns again and again. Gödel's solutions to Einstein's equations, the rotating universes where time loops back on itself, intrigue him. He does not accept them as descriptions of our universe, but he admires the artistry of the mathematics. He admires the depth of thought behind them. And he admires Gödel himself, whose mind reaches so far into abstraction that even Einstein sometimes struggles to follow. Then there are the quiet evenings when Einstein returns home and finds himself alone with his violin. He lifts it gently, settles it against his chin, and draws the bow across the strings. The notes fill the room with something fragile and luminous, something that feels like a bridge between the human world and the mathematical one. Music was his first love, long before physics. He once said that if he were not a physicist, he would have been a musician. The two fields, to him, were not separate. Both sought harmony. Both sought coherence. Both sought a kind of truth that lives beneath the surface of experience. As he plays, his mind drifts, not toward equations, but toward life itself. He thinks about how strange it is to be human, to be aware, to be able to look at the universe and ask questions that stretch beyond one's own lifetime. He wonders what awareness truly is. He wonders how a mind made of matter can contemplate matter. He does not attempt to answer these questions with physics. Instead, he holds them softly, letting them rest inside him without the pressure of solution. The older he becomes, the more humility deepens in him. Not the humility of someone who doubts his own ideas, but the humility of someone who recognizes the size of the universe. The humility of someone who knows that every insight is a stepping stone, not a final destination. He once wrote that the more he learned, the more he realized how much he did not understand. This was not a lament. It was gratitude. Mystery was not a failure of knowledge. It was the source of wonder. He sees this most clearly when the topic turns to consciousness, a subject he rarely addressed directly, but always felt hovering at the edges of physics. He does not claim that awareness collapses wave functions. He does not claim that the mind shapes reality in mystical ways. But he senses that consciousness is not accidental, that it is part of the universe's unfolding, not separate from it, that the observer is not an intruder but a participant. Letters from students often ask him whether he believes in free will. He answers with a kind of gentle ambivalence. Physics suggests determinism, he says, but human experience suggests freedom. Perhaps the two are not as incompatible as they appear. Perhaps what we call free will is part of the same deep structure that shapes space-time. He never resolves this tension. He simply acknowledges it, the way one acknowledges a beautiful sunset without needing to understand the precise scattering of light. These reflections deepen as he senses his life nearing its end. He does not fear it. He speaks of death with a calmness that surprises those around him. He calls it the next great mystery, one that science will never fully illuminate. He tells his friends that the distinction between life and death is less absolute than it seems, that consciousness may be part of a continuum, that time, as he has shown, does not truly vanish but simply exists in another region of space-time. He spends more time near the window now, watching light shift across the floor, watching leaves fall and snow gather and seasons turn. Each moment feels like a quiet reminder of the universality he has spent his life studying. Change, motion, flow, curvature, everything moving along the geometry of nature. And in all this, his humility shines most clearly. He never boasts, never claims certainty, never insists that his view is the only one. He once said that he felt like a child wandering on the shore of a vast ocean, picking up one smooth stone after another while the great sea of truth lay unexplored before him. That image remains the truest expression of who he was in his final years. A mind shaped by curiosity, a heart shaped by wonder, a life shaped by the search for coherence. When he returns to his desk for the last time, long after the world has grown accustomed to his presence, he picks up his pencil and begins again on the equations of unification. The symbols drift across the page like a final gesture, gentle and unfinished. He works not for recognition, not for fame, but because he loves the universe too deeply to stop asking questions. The pencil scratches softly. The world outside moves on, and Einstein, seated at his desk, remains exactly where he has always been, at the threshold between what is known and what is infinite. There is a certain atmosphere inside the Institute for Advanced Study during Einstein's final decade that feels almost suspended in time. Colleagues move softly through the hallways as though passing through a place of unusual gravity, aware that they share the grounds with someone who redefined the way the universe is perceived. But Einstein doesn't walk those halls like a monument. He moves like a man who has grown comfortable living in two worlds, one made of paper and chalk and the quiet structure of mathematics, the other made of memory, music, and the slow ripening of wisdom that can only arrive with age. During these years, a kind of rhythm settles into him. Days shaped not by deadlines, but by the steady pull of curiosity. Mornings begin with letters and tea. Afternoons unfold into long stretches of thought. Evenings drift into music. Yet beneath this gentle pattern lies an intensity, a quiet fire that flickers behind his eyes whenever he speaks about the nature of reality. Friends who visit him during this period often comment on the strange mixture of playfulness and depth he carries. He jokes easily, laughs often, and smiles with the unguarded warmth of someone who has nothing left to prove. But when conversation turns toward the foundations of physics, the air in the room shifts. His voice softens, his posture straightens slightly, and he begins to speak with the clarity of someone who sees the universe not as a collection of objects, but as a single, unfolding whole. He talks about space as though it were a living fabric. He describes time as if it were a river flowing through the mind, rather than something measured by clocks. He speaks about energy with the same reverence others reserve for prayer. And he speaks about unification not as an ambition, but as a calling. There is a particular afternoon, late in his life, when a young physicist visits him. The man, nervous and eager, presents a stack of papers filled with equations, his own attempt to bridge quantum mechanics with relativity. Einstein listens patiently, flipping through the pages with deliberate care. He pauses occasionally, tapping a formula with his finger, pondering its structure. When the young physicist finishes explaining, he sits quietly, waiting for the verdict. Einstein closes the folder gently, places his hands together, and looks at him with eyes that seem to hold a lifetime of understanding. He tells him that the equations are elegant, the approach creative, but that unification demands more than technique. It demands an intuition for the hidden symmetry of the world. He tells the young man that physics must never lose sight of beauty, that truth resides where elegance and coherence meet. And then he smiles and adds that no one, not even the old men with wild hair, should ever pretend to know how deep that symmetry truly goes. Moments like this reveal the side of Einstein that the world rarely sees: a mentor, a guide, someone who understands that science is not merely a profession, but a lifelong relationship with mystery. He does not claim authority. He offers companionship in the search. During these years, his thoughts turn more frequently to the question of what lies beneath the known laws of nature. He considers the possibility that space-time itself might not be fundamental, that perhaps geometry is not the final word, that beneath the curvature and fields, something more subtle waits to be discovered. He suspects that matter and energy might be manifestations of a deeper structure, patterns emerging from a more primitive field. He never finds the answer, but the search fills him with a quiet joy. He often speaks with colleagues about the nature of beauty in physics. He insists that any true theory of the universe must possess aesthetic harmony. Not superficial prettiness, but a deep sense of inevitability. The feeling that the equations could not have been otherwise. This principle guides his late work. He abandons ideas that feel forced. He pursues ideas that resonate with a sense of inner coherence. This aesthetic intuition, this sense of inner harmony, becomes one of the few constants in his life as the world around him changes. The Cold War intensifies. Political tension rises. The threat of nuclear conflict looms. Einstein speaks out again and again, urging humanity to step back from the brink. He signs manifestos, writes letters to world leaders, gives interviews where his voice trembles not with fear, but with frustration. He understands power, not as something to be wielded, but as something that must be tempered by wisdom. He has seen what happens when human ambition outpaces human understanding. He has seen the shadow side of discovery. In the quieter moments, he thinks about how his own work contributed, indirectly, to the atomic age. He thinks about how equations scribbled on a notepad decades earlier became the seeds of unimaginable force. He never blames himself directly, but he carries a sense of responsibility that shapes his actions for the rest of his life. He becomes vocal about disarmament, about global cooperation, about the unity of humanity. Late in the day, when visitors have gone and the institute grows quiet, Einstein sometimes leans back in his chair and lets his thoughts wander into the philosophical terrain he rarely explores publicly. He thinks about what it means for the universe to be understandable, what it means for the human mind to grasp laws that existed long before humans themselves emerged. He wonders whether mathematics is discovered or invented, whether consciousness is an emergent property or a fundamental feature of reality, whether time flows or whether the mind creates the illusion of flow. He never answers these questions. He holds them gently, like relics of an ancient mystery. To him, not knowing is not a limitation. It is an invitation. He often returns to a particular memory from childhood. The moment when he first saw a geometry book, crisp and clean, its theorems unfolding with a clarity that seemed otherworldly. He remembers feeling that he was not learning something new, but remembering something familiar, as though the truths of geometry were written into the fabric of his being long before he encountered them. Now, in his final decades, he wonders whether the universe itself is structured in a way that minds are meant to comprehend, whether awareness is part of the same pattern as space-time, whether consciousness is the universe looking back at itself. He does not say these things aloud. He does not write them in papers, but they appear in the way he speaks about the cosmos, in the softness of his voice when he describes the elegance of a simple equation, in the way his eyes linger on the evening sky as if reading something written in the fading light. Every so often, he receives letters asking whether he believes in God. He responds with honesty. He does not believe in a personal deity, but he believes deeply in the order of the universe, in the harmony of natural law, in the mystery that underlies all existence. He writes that his religion, if one can call it that, is a humble admiration for the intelligence revealed in creation, a cosmic religious feeling. This feeling permeates everything he does in these final years. It guides his work, his conversations, his quiet walks, his music, his reflections. It is the thread that runs through his life from beginning to end. And then there are the nights. Nights when he sits alone at his desk long after the sun has set, the only light coming from a lamp that casts a warm glow across his papers. He picks up his pencil, the room silent except for the faint sound of his breath. He begins to write again, not because he expects to finish the unified field theory, but because the act of searching feels sacred. He traces equations with a hand that trembles slightly now. The symbols are familiar, the curves steady, the intuition guiding them unchanged. He follows ideas to their edges. He stops when the trail fades. He starts again the next day. As he works, the universe seems to lean toward him, as though curious about the man who spent his life trying to listen to its quietest signals. And he listens back, not with desperation, but with the peaceful intensity of someone who knows that the search itself is the point. He is older now. His body slows. His steps shorten. But his mind continues to roam, unfettered and luminous. And in these final years, the distance between Einstein and the cosmos he loved grows thin, almost imperceptibly thin. If you asked him then what he considered his greatest discovery, he would not say relativity. He would not say the photoelectric effect. He would not say any of his famous equations. He would say that he learned, again and again, that the universe is far more mysterious than anyone imagines. That human thought is a fragile but beautiful thing, and that wonder is the deepest truth a person can hold. His life becomes a quiet testament to this. Each day is a step into a mystery that grows larger the closer he approaches it. And yet, he keeps walking. There comes a time near the very end of Einstein's life when the boundary between worldly concerns and timeless contemplation begins to dissolve. The days still move in familiar rhythms. The tea, the morning light, the slow walk to the institute, the soft pencil lines tracing through equations. But something changes in the quality of his awareness. The sharp edges of ambition have worn away. What remains is a gentler exploration, driven not by the desire to solve a problem, but by the desire to deepen his relationship with the universe itself. Imagine him on a late afternoon, sunlight spilling through the window in long golden strips that stretch across the floorboards. The dust in the air glitters as it moves, tiny particles drifting in the warmth of the light. Einstein sits quietly in a wooden chair, one leg crossed over the other, his hands resting loosely in his lap. He is not reading, not writing, not calculating. He is simply thinking. His thoughts drift toward the nature of simplicity, how the greatest insights often emerge when complexity falls away. He remembers the moment when he first understood that time must slow when motion increases. How strange and yet how inevitable it felt. He remembers seeing gravity not as a force but as curvature. How the idea arrived with a sense of calm certainty, like something the universe had been waiting to reveal. In these final years, his reflections become less about discovery and more about understanding the meaning of discovery. He sees that the equations he once wrestled with are not merely tools, but windows. Each formula a lens through which the universe becomes visible. Each insight a doorway into a deeper stratum of reality. He thinks about why the world is comprehensible at all, how remarkable it is that minds made of atoms can understand atoms, that consciousness made of matter can contemplate matter, that human thought, fragile and fleeting, can apprehend the curvature of space-time and the behavior of particles in superposition. He wonders whether this comprehensibility is a coincidence or a clue. Perhaps the universe is not merely a collection of laws, but a structure that invites understanding. Perhaps consciousness is woven into the cosmic order in ways physics has only begun to approach. He discusses some of these ideas with close friends, but only lightly. He does not seek to turn them into theories. He speaks of them as one speaks of weather or music or the shape of a dream. They are impressions, intuitions, insights glimpsed in passing. He spends more time now thinking about humanity, the fragile thread that runs through culture and history, the capacity for both creation and destruction. He has seen too much to be naive, yet he remains strangely hopeful. He believes that reason, compassion, and curiosity form the core of human nature. If nurtured, they could guide the world into a future shaped not by fear, but by understanding. Sometimes he receives visitors, students, scientists, thinkers, friends. They sit with him in his modest living room, tea or coffee steaming gently on the table. They speak about physics, philosophy, ethics. They speak about the future of science, about the next generation of theories that might unify the quantum world with relativity. Einstein listens more than he speaks now. He nods, smiles, offers small suggestions, never prescriptive, always gentle. He tells them to trust beauty, to trust intuition, to follow the questions that feel alive. He never pretends to have the answers. He simply encourages them to keep asking. As the years continue, his health begins to fade, but his spirit does not. He still walks, though slower now, still works, though for shorter periods, still reads, though his eyes tire more easily, still plays his violin, though the notes tremble with age. The music feels deeper now, heavier with memory. The bow moves softly across the strings, each note a reflection, a breath, a quiet acknowledgement of the life that has unfolded. One evening, as snow falls softly outside, Einstein sits by the window listening to the quiet. Snowflakes drift past the glass, illuminated by the warm glow of the lamp behind him. He watches their movement, each one unique, yet all governed by the same invisible laws of physics. He marvels at how the universe expresses its order in countless forms, from crystalline patterns in winter air to the paths of galaxies deep in the night. He thinks about all the people he has known, the teachers who pushed him away, the mentors who encouraged him, the friends who argued with him, the students who inspired him, the family he loved, complicated and imperfect, the world he moved through with curiosity and bewilderment. He realizes something simple and profound, that his life has been shaped not only by ideas, but by relationships. That thought itself is a form of connection. That every question he asked was, in some way, a conversation with the universe, and with the people who walked the path beside him. In these final months, he reflects more deeply on the unified field theory he has pursued for decades. He senses he will not find it in this lifetime. Yet he feels no disappointment. The search was enough. The equations, the insights, the failures, the breakthroughs, all of it part of a larger journey. A journey that will continue long after him. A journey that began long before he arrived. He senses that unification will come one day, but not from the path he walked. It will come from a new generation, from ideas he cannot yet imagine. He hopes they will remember that beauty matters, that humility matters, that mystery is not something to be feared, but embraced. One morning, as he reviews the equations he has been working on, he pauses. The pencil rests gently in his hand. He looks at the symbols he has drawn, recognizing their incompleteness. He smiles quietly. The universe, he thinks, will always be one step ahead. That is its nature. That is its gift. Discovery is not the end of mystery, but its expansion. He sets down the pencil, closes the notebook, and sits back in his chair. There is a moment then when everything feels suspended. The room, the light, the quiet, his thoughts. It is as though the fabric of time becomes briefly transparent, revealing something beneath it, something soft, luminous, and infinite. He breathes. For the first time in many years, he is not thinking, not questioning, not searching. He is simply present. One life moving gently toward its final chapter. One mind resting in the universe it spent a lifetime exploring. In the last stretch of Einstein's life, the world around him grows softer, as though the edges of reality themselves have begun to blur. Princeton becomes quieter. The halls of the Institute feel more spacious. The weight of time loosens its grip, and the days drift with a gentleness that matches the slow rhythm of his steps. His mind remains luminous, alive, curious. But there is a different quality to his thoughts now. Not urgency, not ambition. Something like closure, though not in any final sense. More like the feeling of standing on a hill at dusk, watching light fade without sorrow, knowing darkness is simply another part of the landscape. On a spring afternoon in 1955, Einstein walks home from the Institute as he always does. The air is cool. The trees are beginning to bloom. There is a faint scent of earth and rain in the wind. He walks slowly, his cane tapping the ground in an easy tempo. Though his body has weakened, his posture still carries a quiet dignity, a calm presence shaped by decades of contemplation. A passerby recognizes him, offers a polite greeting, and Einstein lifts a hand in reply. He continues along the path, listening to the soft rustling of branches overhead, listening to his own breath, aware of the gentle ache in his body, but not troubled by it. Age is not something he resists. It simply is. Another expression of the universe's unfolding. He arrives home and sits by the window. Afternoon light pours through the glass in a warm flood, illuminating the room with the soft gold that seems to accompany so many of his quiet moments. He rests his hands in his lap, letting the world settle into silence. He feels tired in a way that feels deeper than exhaustion, not unpleasant. More like the natural settling of something that has been in motion for a long time. A few letters remain on the small table beside him. He reaches for one, reads it slowly, smiles faintly at the earnestness of the student who wrote it. Another question about unification. Another question about God. Einstein reads the letter twice, then sets it aside. He does not feel the need to respond today. He simply rests in the thought that there will always be more questions than answers, and that this is exactly as it should be. Evening approaches. The room cools slightly. He rises from the chair with effort, retrieves his violin, and returns to the same spot near the window where he has played so many times before. The instrument fits into his hand with the ease of an old friend. He draws the bow slowly across the strings, and the room fills with a quiet melody, soft and warm and slightly wavering. The notes drift like embers, rising and falling with the softness of breath. He plays not to perform, not to impress, but to feel that deep inner resonance that music gives him. A resonance that mirrors the harmony he has sought in equations, the coherence he has sought in nature. The music glows in the space around him. It becomes a quiet celebration of a life lived in pursuit of understanding. As the final notes fade, he lowers the violin gently onto his lap. He sits for a long while, feeling the silence return, feeling the presence of something larger than himself in the stillness. Not a presence outside him, a presence within the very fabric of existence. Days pass, his health weakens, he grows thinner, sleeps more, walks less. Yet the clarity of his mind does not diminish. If anything, it sharpens. Thoughts come in soft waves. Memories rise like echoes. Childhood, youth, Bern, Zurich, Berlin, Princeton, the people who shaped him, the discoveries that unfolded through him, the quiet moments that punctuated everything. One morning, as sunlight touches the bedside table, he asks for paper and pencil. He wants to continue working on the unified field theory, even now. His hand trembles as he writes. The lines curve unevenly, but the intent behind them remains steady. Equations flow onto the page in fragments. Concepts that have followed him for decades gather once more in the margins. He knows he will not finish this. He knows the theory will remain incomplete. But the act of writing feels like the final gesture of a lifelong conversation with the universe. He sets the pencil down, exhausted but peaceful. The equations shimmer briefly in the lamplight. Incomplete, but not empty. They are markers of a journey that will be carried forward by others. He knows this. He feels it with a quiet certainty. As days slip gently into nights, his thoughts turn inward. Consciousness feels lighter now, more fluid, as though the boundary between waking and dreaming has softened. He recalls the compass of his childhood, the strange magic of its needle pointing north. He recalls the geometry book that opened new worlds in his mind. He recalls the beam of light he once imagined chasing, the idea that began everything. He recalls the countless moments of awe he felt across a lifetime, each one a spark in the dark. In the quiet of his room, he reflects on time. Not the time measured by clocks, but the time felt by the heart. He realizes that his life has unfolded in the same way the universe unfolds, through expansion, through contraction, through cycles of clarity and confusion, through moments of revelation and moments of humility. He sees it all now with a gentle distance, as though looking down at a vast landscape from above. He does not fear death. He once wrote that the distinction between past, present, and future is an illusion, though a persistent one. Now, as he lies in bed, that illusion grows thinner. The flow of time loosens. Moments merge. The present stretches out like a calm lake, smooth and reflective. There is a final evening when friends come to check on him. He greets them with a faint smile and speaks softly, but the clarity in his voice remains. He expresses no regret, only gratitude. They leave the room quietly, sensing that this chapter is drawing to its close. Later, in the deep quiet of night, Einstein lies awake, aware of the soft hum of existence around him. He feels his heartbeat. He feels the warmth of the blankets. He feels the presence of his own breath rising and falling. Everything is slow. Everything is calm. He closes his eyes. In the stillness, something inside him loosens. The boundaries of thought dissolve. The familiar structure of identity softens, opening into a vastness he has sensed all his life. Not darkness, not light, something beyond both. A presence without shape, a quiet without absence, a field without edges. The same field he has spent a lifetime trying to understand through equations. The same unity he felt through music. The same coherence he glimpsed in the symmetry of nature. He drifts through it gently, not as a man reaching an ending, but as a consciousness returning to a continuity that always existed beneath the surface. The universe holds him. He breathes once more, then rests. Morning comes softly to Princeton. The house on Mercer Street stands quiet. Light touches the window pane, as it always has. The world continues, carrying the imprint of a mind that expanded its understanding of reality in ways that will ripple for centuries. Students wake and open their textbooks. Physicists gather in offices and laboratories. Theories evolve, ideas shift, discoveries rise. And across all of it, Einstein's presence lingers, not as an icon, not as an image, but as a way of seeing, a way of wondering, a way of listening to the universe. His story remains not in the equations themselves, but in the humility behind them. Not in the answers he found, but in the courage to ask the simplest and deepest questions. Not in the fame he earned, but in the quiet honesty of his curiosity. And in this moment, as the story settles into its final breath, the listener can feel it too. The sense that Einstein's universe was never something distant, never something unreachable. It is the universe we all inhabit, the universe inside every thought, every moment of awareness, every flicker of wonder. A universe still expanding, a universe still unfolding, a universe still waiting to be understood. His journey ends. The mystery continues. There is a quiet that follows a great story, a soft moment after the last words settle where the mind continues drifting on its own momentum. The world feels slightly larger, slightly slower, as though some hidden dimension has opened just a little wider. Einstein's journey leaves that kind of quiet behind. A quiet made not of endings, but of continuation. A quiet shaped by the sense that the universe remains unfinished, waiting patiently for the next observer to look up and wonder. You might imagine the world the morning after Einstein's story comes to a close. Princeton waking gently, unaware for a moment that a light has gone out. Trees standing still, branches touching the sky with the same delicate persistence as always. Birds moving through the cool air. The earth turning beneath it all. Life continuing with the steady rhythm it carried long before Einstein arrived and long after he left. Somewhere, a student picks up a book and reads the first lines of a paper Einstein wrote in his youth. Somewhere else, a physicist sketches a diagram on a whiteboard, tracing curves of space-time that Einstein once imagined alone in a small apartment in Bern. A violinist in a distant city plays a melody Einstein once loved. A teacher explains to a group of young minds that time is not absolute. A child looks at a compass for the first time and feels something unfamiliar stir inside them. In countless small ways, his presence continues. Not as a shadow, not as a monument, but as a current running quietly through thought itself. What remains is not the certainty of answers, but the courage to question. The sense that the universe is accessible, that its laws, however complex, are illuminated by the same light that falls across a quiet desk or a late afternoon street. Einstein's legacy is the reminder that curiosity is a doorway into infinite space. And, as that thought settles, the mind drifts into a broader stillness. A sense that the story just told is not separate from the listener's own story. That the same wonder which guided Einstein's life lives quietly in every moment of awareness. It appears in the way thoughts gather like constellations, in the way attention moves like a beam of light across the inner world, in the way questions rise unbidden when the mind grows quiet enough. The universe that Einstein revealed was never a distant structure. It was always here, woven into every breath, every sensation, every spark of reflection. The curvature of space-time does not live in faraway galaxies alone. It lives in the body, in motion, in the simple act of standing on the earth. The quantum world is not limited to laboratories. It hums inside every atom, every cell, every flicker of thought. And consciousness, whatever its nature, is not outside the universe. It is one of the universe's expressions, a way for the cosmos to experience its own unfolding from within. Einstein understood this in his own quiet way. He sensed that the boundary between observer and observed is more porous than it seems, that awareness is part of the same tapestry as planets and stars and fields of energy, that the mystery of existence does not stand apart from the one who wonders. In this epilogue, the story gently releases its hold. The journey ends the way all journeys end, not with a closing door, but with an opening horizon. The listener is left in a space both larger and softer than before, a space where the mind can move freely, drifting across ideas without urgency. There is no need to cling to the narrative. Its resonance remains on its own, like the last faint vibration of a violin string after the bow has lifted. Somewhere in that resonance is a simple truth, one Einstein carried quietly throughout his life. That wonder is not a luxury. It is a compass, a guide, a way of aligning with the deeper rhythms of the universe, and it is always available. It arrives whenever the mind pauses long enough to feel the strangeness of being alive. The story rests now. The mind drifts. The vastness remains. And through that vastness, a single quiet thought lingers. The universe is still speaking, and you are part of the conversation.